and Middle Tennessee meet on the gridiron Saturday from Lane Stadium, and we're going to get you set for it here on this edition of 3304 Kickoff. I'm Jake Lyman, to my left Tyler Katz, and we'll soon be joined by our three reporters, Kevin DiDomenico, Carter Hill, and Andy Losi. Tyler, looking at this game, the words trap game come to mind. The Hokies getting a big upset win over North Carolina last week, and looking ahead, travel to Morgantown to face rival West Virginia next week. How can the Hokies avoid this game falling between the cracks?
Well, you're exactly right, Jake, and the big part of that is that Virginia Tech had literal months to prepare for North Carolina, and they got the job done, winning 17-10 last week over then number 10 North Carolina. Looking ahead, the Black Diamond Trophy is up for grabs, and the Hokies' first trip to Morgantown in nearly 2 decades. In the middle of all that, the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders. Justin Fuente and company really need to have a game plan, as this isn't some FCS opponent. This is an FBS opponent that is really a formidable foe, getting a few Power 5 victories in their previous few seasons. For Justin Fuente and co., they really need to have a solid game plan and stop the Middle Tennessee passing attack led by HOCKMAN.
Well, for Virginia Tech, some of these trap games have gotten them in the past. I don't think Hokie fans like to remember Old Dominion, James Madison, but one of the best ways to avoid an upset is to play great defense. That's what the Hokies did last weekend. For more on Justin Hamilton's group, we send it down to Kevin DiDomenico.
After the uncertainty of the 2020 season, there were some question marks heading into this year's college football campaign. For the Virginia Tech Hokies coming into Week 1, there were question marks on both sides of the ball, particularly defense. The Hokies ranked 10th in the ACC in points against per game at 32 last year. Needless to say, after all the COVID issues the Hokies went through, Tech had doubts about the defensive ability coming into the 2021 season. Tech can look no further after Week 1 because the Lunch Pail D was alive and well against UNC on Friday. The Hokie defense shut down the Heisman hopeful Sam Howell, who was picked off 3 times and posted a QBR of 41.1. Leading the charge defensively was Chamari Connor with 8 tackles. How about this? 6 of them solo and an interception to seal the victory for Virginia Tech. And they had pressure on Sam Howell all night, sacking the Tar Heels quarterback 6 times, ranking the Virginia Tech Hokies 8th in the country after Week 1. So what is that key ingredient that the Virginia Tech Hokies need for a victory in Week 2? I think we got our answer in Week 1. It's defense. Guys.
Well, that lunch pail defense, surely a large reason why the Hokies were able to pull off the upset last week against North Carolina. They'll look for a similar performance this Saturday against Middle Tennessee. But Tyler, the offense struggled a little bit, especially cashing in on some opportunities. Who needs to step up for the Hokies offense?
Well, you're exactly right, Jake. 17 points in total for the Hokies, including a devastating fumble in the first quarter in the red zone. It was actually Raheem Blackshear, the running back, who led the Hokies in receiving yards with 66. When it comes to this week against the Blue Raiders, it's exactly that. The passing game, Braxton Burmeister and his receivers need to take a big step up in order to get past the Blue Raider defense.
Well, the Blue Raiders secondary, a younger team, but that's the group that's the most experienced and maybe the most talented, and they're led by BLANKENSHIP. He took over at safety 5 years ago, a 5-year starter as a senior this year. Took over for Kevin Byard, who was a future All-Pro with the Tennessee Titans. BLANKENSHIP, a tough guy for the Hokies to deal with, and that could be the matchup that decides this game.
Now, while BLANKENSHIP has been there, he's in his 5th year with Middle Tennessee, but in those 5 years, let alone ever, the Middle Tennessee States have yet to defeat a ranked opponent in program history. They'll be upset-minded, and for more on that, we toss it down to our own Carter Hill.
The Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders come into Blacksburg Saturday afternoon to take on the 19th-ranked Virginia Tech Hokies with just one thing on their mind: pulling off the upset. The Blue Raiders haven't taken down a Power 5 opponent since taking down Syracuse in the Carrier Dome back in 2017. And they'll look to snap that Power 5 winless streak right in the shoulders of NC State transfer quarterback Bailey HOCKMAN. HOCKMAN threw for just a mere 82 yards in last season's 45-24 NC State loss to Virginia Tech. Going 7 for 16, didn't find the end zone, and threw 2 interceptions before being benched in the second half. The Middle Tennessee run game will also have to get going as well. The Blue Raiders rushed for just a mere 112 yards against Monmouth last week, and top running back Chad Mobley only added 24 of that yardage. The receiving corps will have to get going as well against a solid Virginia Tech secondary. CJ Wyndham and Jaron Pierce will be the two guys that Hockman will have to target all afternoon long if the Blue Raiders are to pull off the upset. Middle Tennessee will look to play spoiler on Saturday afternoon for a Tech team that has this game sandwiched in between two rivalry games with North Carolina and West Virginia, and they'll look to make sure they capitalize on that this weekend. Guys, back to you.
Well, with Virginia Tech's upset of North Carolina last week, it really leaves the ACC standings wide open now that Virginia Tech has a tiebreaker with North Carolina.
Well, the Coastal is always a little bit chaotic, but this year could he be even more so? A couple of big losses in week one. Again, Virginia Tech upsets North Carolina. Georgia Tech loses at home to Northern Illinois, and Miami blown out by Alabama, but that's kind of what you expect playing the Crimson Tide. But Clemson also lost, albeit to a top 5 Georgia team, but a lot of turmoil in the ACC early on in this season, leaving it pretty much wide open, and Virginia Tech right in the thick of it early on.
Well, while every game is a big game for Virginia Tech players, some former Hokies are having the biggest games of their lives so far as the NFL kicks off. And for more on some Hokies and the pros, we send it down to Andy Losi.
As you transition from Saturdays to Sundays, 15 former Virginia Tech Hokies will be playing in the NFL come week one. This includes 4 new rookies that will be making their debut over the week, including 2 former first-round selections with Caleb Farley to the Tennessee Titans and Christian Darrisaw to the Minnesota Vikings. Moving down the draft order, you have 3rd-round selection of Devon Diablo with the Las Vegas Raiders and the 6th-round selection of Khalil Herbert with the Chicago Bears. I mentioned that 15 number. Those are the active players on the 53-man roster across the NFL. No team in the NFL has more than the Washington football team that homes 3 former Hokies that are in the NFL. Looking into the position side of the breakdown of Virginia Tech, you have 8 on the defensive side. Obviously, Virginia Tech, known for their lunch pail defense, you have a good talent pool from Blacksburg moving to the NFL. And on the offensive side, you home 7 names in the NFL, including Houston Texans starting quarterback and Tyrod Taylor, who will be making his Houston Texans debut as Deshaun Watson is sidelined for week one. Obviously, it should be a fun week one of action around the NFL, but it'll be interesting to see how the Hokies are able to do in the next level, including the young players that have just left Blacksburg.
A whiteout for Virginia Tech as for the first time the Hokies and the Blue Raiders meet on the football field. A 2 o'clock kickoff from Lane Stadium on the ACC Network Extra will also cover it for 3304 Sports with myself and Jake Lyman on the call. For reporters Andy Losi, Carter Hill, and Kevin DiDomenico, my partner Jake Lyman, I'm Tyler Katz. Thank you for watching 3304 Kickoff.